Episode 4 of Visit Home. After ditching that annoying girl, Jacob went to the second floor of the library to look for some information. After spending 2 hours, he ended up borrowing a few relevant books and walked out of the library. As he expected, the girl was nowhere in sight when he got out. Looking up at the gloomy sky, Jacob was still thinking about the entire incident involving the mysterious girl. He wondered if he'd be doomed next week thanks to her. If her parents really came to see him about it, how annoying would that be? It was completely her fault for losing her belonging, yet she blamed him for it just so she could shirk off any responsibility of her own. When he returned to his dorm room, his roommates were all concerned with the cause and the aftermath of the incident. However, all Jacob told them was that it was smoothly resolved and did not go into any details. He didn't want to drag his roommates into something so troublesome and annoying. The girl is very pretty, though. Just give her a few years, she'll definitely become the most popular girl in any school. Sam sighed in admiration while patting Jacob's shoulder as he tried to comfort him. Sure, she was pretty, but she was also a huge troublemaker. Therefore, the smart thing to do would be to avoid any contact with her, thought Jacob. Didn't you have to go home this weekend? Did you finish looking up all that information you needed? Sam asked. Yep, I am just getting ready to leave for home now. Jacob placed the books he borrowed from the library on his desk and took out another empty backpack. Come back a bit early tomorrow so we can play cards in the evening. Sam patted Jacob's shoulder again while instilling a friendly reminder. Sure, I will. Thanks for your help today. Jacob waved to his roommates as he left. On the bus home, Jacob couldn't help but roll up his sleeve to examine his wrist again. The green marks were strikingly similar to dragon scales. Thanks to his vigorous scrubbing, the green color had become quite pale. He imagined if his grandma saw this, she would surely think he had been hanging out with the wrong crowd in school and got himself a tattoo. Jacob let out a heavy sigh. As he opened the window, a cool breeze came in and lightly caressed his face. Gradually, he fell asleep. Jacob woke up in an hour and realized that he was almost home. Sleepy and exhausted, he grabbed his backpack and got off the bus 15 minutes later. He started walking along a wide concrete path. From time to time, there were expensive and fancy cars passing by him. In contrast, carrying a backpack and walking on foot, Jacob felt a bit pathetic and miserable. It took him exactly 30 minutes to reach his ancestral home in Sturgeon Bay. It was a pretty house, but one of the most ordinary among the group of cottages that surrounded it. It was an ordinary-looking 2-story cottage that was only 200 meters away from the beach. Grandma! Feeling a little exhausted, Jacob shouted as he pushed open a carved-through iron gate. Jacob, you're back! A kind and benign-looking woman came out of the house and welcomed Jacob with her big, wrinkly smile. How come you were so late today? I have an assignment due next week, so I had to look up some more information before I could leave. Following his grandma inside the house, Jacob asked, How was your week, Grandma? Business as usual. Did some cleaning around the house, took some walks along the beach, tended to the flowers and the lawn, and did some stock trading as well. Uncle James is off on a fishing trip this weekend. Let Grandma show off her cooking this time, Grandma answered with a chuckle. Stock trading? How much did you earn this week? Jacob inquired lightheartedly. It is not a business where you can just make money every week. In fact, I lost $6,000 this week. But you know, this is not what Grandma cares about nowadays. Actually, there was news from Norway. Your parents are about to finish their expedition and might be able to come home next month. Grandma explained to Jacob as she walked into the kitchen. Oh, next month? That is soon. Jacob followed her into the kitchen to help her out. Actually, they had hired a cook, Uncle James. It was so that someone could cook for Grandma and keep her company here in the cottage. As Jacob's parents were abroad and Jacob had to go to school during the week, it could get boring and lonely for her. However, Uncle James was away this weekend. Jacob made sure to come home to keep his grandma company. He liked being around her anyway and didn't need an excuse to visit. Besides his parents, who were elusive and rarely home, he was closest to his grandma. Grandma, there is a question I wanted to ask you. said Jacob while he chopped vegetables. "Do you think dragons exist?" "Dragons?" Grandma seemed to be interested in this topic, and her eyes lit up as she began talking. "Apparently, some residents of Wisconsin had had encounters with dragons here back in the days." "Really?" Jacob was now genuinely engaged as well. "Yes, actually, I had an encounter myself. I was young then, in my 20s. One day, I was working in the field, and a storm had come upon us out of nowhere. A good friend of mine and I were trying to find a place to shelter ourselves. It was then that I saw a chunk of awfully thick cloud suddenly descend to a low altitude." As his grandma mentioned the clouds and the change in weather, Jacob's heart sank. He urged her to go on. "Then what happened, Grandma? Keep going." "Well, at the time, I saw a flash of dragon-shaped lightning protrude out of the cloud, and it swam across the sky for a bit. I was terrified. I later thought it was an illusion, but the cloud was grayish to white, very different from the other clouds in the sky, which were pitch black." Grandma was lost in deep thought as she recalled the incident. "Lightning. I guess it was a natural phenomenon after all," Jacob stated firmly, bringing Grandma's attention back from her thoughts. "That was what your father said to me as well. But he never had any interest or tolerance for supernatural phenomena. However, the friend who was with me that day told me that she indeed saw a white dragon come out of the cloud. He flew downwards and started sucking the water from the lake. She claimed that she saw a broad spout of water ascend skyward from the lake. I asked if it was true, and she said she was absolutely sure about it and would never lie to me." Grandma's description was so vivid and detailed that it was giving Jacob goosebumps. If dragons really did exist, then why did you want to ask about dragons all of a sudden? Snapping out of her reminiscence, Grandma asked Jacob. "Oh, I was just curious." Retracting his surprised expression, Jacob lowered his head and continued to chop vegetables. "Here in Wisconsin, it is said that many people have seen dragons in the past. Also, according to legends from the past, there was supposedly a dragon palace nearby. Unfortunately, people of today do not believe in these occurrences and call them myths," Grandma added. "Are these the dragons from the legends we heard as we grew up?" Jacob asked. "Haha, maybe," said Grandma as she finished washing the vegetables. "How come we don't see dragons anymore then?" Jacob inquired. "It could be due to the change of environment. With the deterioration of the environment, many creatures have gone extinct." Grandma's response had left Jacob speechless. Soon enough, the topic changed, and the two talked about various topics and finished dinner. After watching TV together for a while, they went off to sleep. Alone in his room, Jacob felt wide awake. He opened the window and gazed up at the splendid starry sky. Coupled with the sound of waves from far away, he thought about the story that his grandmother had told him earlier. He had developed an intense desire to find out whether dragons existed in this world or not. Lifting his wrist, the green-colored imprint was still evident on his arm. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that the pattern resembled dragon scales. "Hey, I'm probably overthinking this." He closed the window, turned off the light, and proceeded to sleep.